Well, that video you just saw, that quick video that you just saw, is a new series that Pastor Jim will begin next week, right? Is my math right? September 7th? Yes. Next week, called Labels and Lies. Really excited about that. I think a big part of that came out of some of our youth's testimony from the Life Conference, and Jim and I have been kind of talking a lot about that. And when I was talking to him about what God did in the teens' heart, labels and lies, I kept saying they had these labels and lies that they, and he's like, that's a really good title for a sermon. So he's been working hard on that. So I'm really excited about that. So make sure you are either here next week or tune in for that. But in the meantime, I get the opportunity to chat with you this morning, and I thought I'd take this opportunity just to share my heart with you, to kind of share why I do what I do, why I spend my time here at Northgate being the Next Gen minister, why I've committed my life to that, and therefore why we as Northgate do what we do. And so I just thought I would take the opportunity to share that with you this morning. As a kid, we didn't really go to church very often, not consistently, but I wasn't a stranger to church, especially when I got old enough to have friends in my neighborhood and kind of do what I wanted to do. And there was two things as a kid that I chased. That was dirt cups and kickball. And those of you who have been around a while, especially in the church world, you know that if you went to a vacation Bible school, especially way back in the day, you're going to find these two things. You're going to find dirt cups for snack, and you were oftentimes going to find kickball as the game. And so those were the two things that I was chasing as a kid because, I mean, who doesn't love dirt cups? Come on. And I know I've had this conversation with you guys before about dirt cups. A few years ago, I talked about it. And kickball, every kid loves kickball. And I say that kind of flippantly and funny, but honestly, those two things have a lot to do with my why and why I do what I do. Because as a kid, we weren't going to church consistently, but as I was chasing those things, I was finding those things, especially in the summer, at vacation Bible schools. Or, as a kid, I went occasionally to an Awana club at a local church, and we didn't always play kickball, but those Awana games, if you're familiar, I mean, I could throw a beanbag like no one's business. I wasn't fast. I couldn't run fast, but I could throw that beanbag in a relay race like no one's business. And so I went to the Awana games and all the things. So those were the things I was chasing, and it has a lot to do with why I do what I do. Because when I was then in high school, it was my freshman year in high school, I wasn't going to church at all, really. In fact, I was running the neighborhood with some of my friends, and we were doing things we shouldn't be doing. And I had a friend that lived behind me. She was my neighbor, and I would say at that point she was my best friend, although in middle school, man, the ebbs and flows of who your best friend is was crazy. But at that point, she was my best friend, and she got grounded. And so we couldn't really see each other except for school. And then one of her punishments by her dad was that she had to go to this youth group. And it happened to be at the same local church that I went to the Awana club occasionally at. And so as a really good friend, what did I do? I went to youth group with her because I couldn't see her otherwise. And so on Wednesday nights, I would go to this youth group with her. And my twin sister actually went as well. And so we go to this youth group, super weird place. Okay, they raised their hands when they were singing these songs, and they asked you your name, and then like next week you go back, they remembered your name. And if you sat in a small group and you asked for prayer for anything, like, for me it was like a math test the next day, they actually remembered it the next day, and they asked you how that math test went. Weird. Like I didn't experience this anywhere else. And so my friend got ungrounded, so I kind of stopped going, but my twin sister kept going. And I was at my locker one Thursday morning, and the girl next to me was like, hey, did you hear what happened to your sister last night? I was like, no. She's like, she became a Christian. I was like, oh, okay. So my sister at youth group the night before had what we know as accepted Christ. And I watched my sister begin to change. She began to change in my life. Her friends began to change. She began to be a different person at school in all these different places. And again, it was weird. And so I had two options. I could either kind of lean into that, or I could reject it. And I chose to reject it. And I did everything I could in my heart. On Sunday mornings and on Wednesday nights, she would come knocking on my bedroom door and ask if I wanted to go. Absolutely not. That's your thing. Those people are weird. I'll do other things. At school, I chose to hang out with the friends that we did have rather than her new friends, and we did everything we could to reject what was going on in her life. But I knew that something was different about her that was kind of cool, and I kind of wanted that. So fast forward a few months, my sister comes home, and she's got some information that the youth group is going to a conference up in Minneapolis at a school called Crown College. And this, I know now that that's a Christian Missionary Alliance college, which is the denomination that Northgate is in, but also the denomination that this church was in. And so a lot of the people in our church were either alumni or were attending. They had kids there. And they were going to this conference. They used to have, it was like on their visitation weekend, and they would have really cool speakers come and a band come, and they would do like this Olympics game, so you play games all day. And but the other thing about that was we didn't really travel as kids. We lived on the other side of Iowa, and one of our biggest vacations was just to Adventureland for the weekend, so we stayed in a hotel a couple nights. That was about it. And so when I heard that we were going out of state, we were going to miss a Friday at school, and the last thing that really tripped the trigger here was that on the way home, they were going to stop at Mall of America. And I was totally in. And so to make it less weird, I started going back to this youth group because, you can't just hop in the van and go on this conference trip without, like being part of the youth group. And so I decided I would start going back. Still a weird place, but God began to do something in my heart that I wasn't necessarily willing to accept, but between Wednesday to Wednesday, it was on my mind a lot. This whole God thing was definitely on my mind. So we go to this conference. It's super fun. I loved every part of it. I'm pretty sure there was kickball. I don't think there was any dirt cups, but there was definitely kickball. God began to really work in my heart. Not only was I spending uninterrupted time with God's people, that turns out they're pretty cool. Not just weird, they're pretty cool. But then towards the end of the conference, in the evening session, I can't tell you what the guy was saying, but I felt in that moment that he was speaking directly to me. He was saying things that I had probably heard before at other churches, but it was different this time. It was different because I felt like he was talking directly to me. And I do know that he was sharing God's love. He was sharing that there's no strings attached to this relationship with Jesus. He just wants to have this relationship with you, and he wants to change your life. And it doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter the burdens that you carry. It doesn't matter the things that you've done that no one else knows about. He knows them, yet he still loves you. And so that night would have been April 20th, 2002. I accepted Christ. And my life completely changed. I knew in that moment that I was going home a completely different person, and I did. Everything changed. My friends changed. My schedule changed. Church became a second home. If I could be in the church, whether it was putting stamps on postcards or it was helping with the children's ministry, whatever it was, I was in the walls of that building, and my life completely changed. And so, as I went through high school at being part of this church, I got involved in children's ministry. I got opportunities to minister to kids in the inner city of Omaha and live there for summers. And I began to realize that this is what God is calling me to do. This is what I desire to do. Because God has given me a story, and he's given each of those kids a story that I got to work with. And a lot of times they aligned. And I could share this hope that I had in this Jesus that they didn't quite know about, that I wanted them to know about. And I was okay being that weird person that those new kids were coming to church for. And so I knew that I was going to be in ministry after my senior year of high school. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so my why, a lot of times, has to do with kickball and dirt cups. But as I got the opportunity to go to a Christian college and study children's ministry and how to do ministry and all the curriculum and all those things, God really kind of began to show me some other really cool things about ministry. But it's not until after I graduated, after I walked across the stage, I was doing an internship out in Moses Lake, Washington, in a children's ministry there, and it was a requirement for my graduation. And I had to do the devotion to kick off this vacation Bible school with the leaders. And it was a big church. It was probably 3 times the size of this church. And I was super nervous. I was super scared, and I had to do the devotion. So God brought me to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. And these passages have really shaped a lot of why I do what I do. Not only chasing kickball and dirt cups, but God really showed me through this passage why we do what we do. And he kind of gave me a sigh of relief of like, oh, okay, there's not quite so much responsibility on this as I think there is. And I'm hoping that maybe this might give some of you a bit of a sigh of relief, maybe whether it's in your volunteer positions or it's in your own families or in your jobs or whatever that looks like. So 1 Corinthians chapter 3, Paul is talking to the church of Corinth, and he's kind of telling them to knock it off, which Paul often does, because they have been quarreling. They're not getting along, and it's really kind of silly, honestly, because they're fighting about who they're following. Some are following Paul, and some are following Apollos, and they both love Jesus, and they both follow Jesus, and they're both changed men, right? And they're sharing probably the same gospel with different words. Yet God's people are fighting on who they're going to follow. And so Paul's letter is saying, like, guys, knock it off, okay? And so this is what he says, beginning in verse 6. He says, I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded according to their own labor. So we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building. When I read this as a 19-year-old, no, I was much older than that. I wasn't 19. It took me a long time to get through college. God had me on a journey. I was in my 20s. I had a huge sigh of relief because this takes the pressure off me. This is not my job. And so, because I'm talking on a Sunday morning, I put some bullet points behind this. I haven't always had bullet points behind this, but this is really why I do what I do, okay? And so what Paul is saying here is ministry is planting and watering. It's planting and watering. And so some of us in ministry are doing the planting. And what that looks like, that can look like maybe you're sharing God's love with a student for the very first time. Or you're helping them understand their value in Christ for the very first time. I can guarantee you someone at those VBSs that was serving me dirt cups or that was leading the game of kickball was sharing those very things. They were sharing about God's love and they were sharing my value. I taking it and running with it and saying, yeah, that's what I want at this point? No, but they were planting that seed in my life. And whether it was through words or not. Some of those people along the way have been watering in my life, okay? Whether it's you're listening to a student talk about their week or talk about a relationship issue, whatever that looks like. Whether it's your student in your own home, came home this week and is talking about a certain thing, or it's a student talking about that on a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning or a Sunday night here in our environments, okay? Or praying for a student for whatever reason. Maybe it's for that very thing that they were explaining or for their family. We're watering. Showing up consistently Showing up consistently to a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning or to your jobs, or being consistently showing up for your kids in your own home, which is sometimes easier said than done. That is watering these seeds that have been planted, okay? But what Paul is saying is that the growth doesn't belong to us. The growth is God's. And so when you're thinking about a garden, some of you are avid gardeners. Some of you are like, let's throw some seed here, let's throw some seed there. I'll let God water it, okay? Despite all of that, none of you, I hope, none of you are out laying in the fields and trying to pull up those plants of whatever you've watered, right? Because you know you can't do that. You can do whatever you can, and as farmers, I'm sure there's many different ways that we can manipulate growth nowadays. But none of you are out there trying to do the growing yourself. That's left to God. That's God. It's in God's control. You can't actually pull it up out of the ground by yourself. It's the same thing in ministry. It's the same thing in the church or in just life of relationships. We can plant seeds by loving someone and telling them about God's love and telling them about their value in God. And we can water it by being there for them, being there consistently for them, showing up when it doesn't feel necessary to even show up, but you're there no matter what. You're there for those people, praying for them, whatever that looks like. We can plant and we can water. But the sigh of relief comes when we realize that God's in control of the growth. God's in control of the growth. And so when we're going back to Levi, putting the popcorn in, and we're throwing up 30 seconds every time, and nothing's happening, right? When we are showing up consistently to, whether it's Wednesday nights or Sunday mornings or Sunday nights, or you're showing up to your jobs, or you're showing up for your family, and nothing's happening, and we give up, what is God doing? God is doing something under the surface that we don't see, and we can't just throw it out because we don't see the growth, because we're not in control of the growth. We get to do what God has called us to do, and that's planting and watering, but the growth is not ours, okay? The same thing in my story. I can guarantee you planting and watering was happening along the road, and the growth was happening. God was doing something in my heart, despite what my attitude looked like, despite what my actions looked like in my neighborhood with my friends, or even in my own home. God was doing something in my heart. And when the time was right, as a 15-year-old, my life was changed, okay? So hopefully that brings some relief to you, because we're not in charge. God's in charge. The second, ministry is building carefully. Paul's going to go on and use another word picture, which is building, and that's in verse 10. And he says this: "Because of God's grace to me, I have laid the foundation, like an expert builder. Now others are building on it." Oh, I'm sorry, I should be reading. Oh, it's not up there. Okay. I have a different translation than you guys do. "Now others are building on it, but whoever is building on this foundation must be very careful. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one we already have, and that is Jesus Christ." And so Paul talks about we are building, and every single brick matters as we're building. And those bricks are different things, and probably the same things that I've been talking about already. Showing up consistently, praying for a student, being here listening to their verses, sitting at a table with them when they're eating their hot dog and potato chips. On a Sunday morning, recognizing that they even exist and that they are present here at Northgate, and asking them how they are, getting down on their level and asking how their week went. And then, the weird thing, remembering it, remembering their name, remembering their circumstances, and coming back around and asking them again. It matters. Every single building block that we are doing matters on this foundation Jesus has already built, that Jesus is already working on. We just get to be part of the building blocks on this foundation. And so I want to talk about the building foundations in kids, because there are some things that we know. And so when Paul talks about building carefully, we're talking about the importance of kids, and we're talking about the importance of the way they grow, the way they see things, the way they see the world is important. And we need to take that into consideration, and we need to take every kid into consideration. And so as we build foundations in kids, here's what we do know, is that by the age of 5, a child's lifelong concept has been formed. By the age of 5, a kid's lifelong concept of God has been formed. Now, this is not every kid's theology, every kid's doctrine. That's not what I'm saying. But the way a kid perceives God, their concept of God, has been formed. And so our concept of something is built by our experiences, built by our traditions. My niece, those of you who know my niece that sometimes runs around with me here, Collins, she's 5. And in fact, she's turning 6 here in just a little bit. And so as I consider this, I'm like, oh my word. And those of you who have 5-year-olds or maybe kids that have surpassed 5, it can be a little terrifying, but it's actually not. But as we consider this, it's the nursery that we have is intentional, is on purpose, and matters. So when a kid arrives under the age of 5, the way that you receive them, the way that you get on the floor and play with them, the way that you rock them and look into their eyes, and maybe you're humming over them, or you're reading a book that we have in the nursery, which every single book in the nursery is intentional. They all have a message about Jesus. Our intentionality of how we perceive a child, how we spend time with a child matters, because especially when they're within the church walls here at Northgate, they are perceiving who God is through you. And so whether we have our hands open and a smile on our face and we're getting down on our level, or we choose to ignore them and treat them like ankle biters and not include them in our life here at Northgate matters. And so we have nursery on Sunday mornings. We are intentional about who is in that nursery, knowing that they are going to love our kids, that they're going to receive them with grace, and that they are going to get on their level and play with them. On Wednesday nights, we have preschool ministry. It could be really easy for us to start with kindergartners because preschool ministry is not easy. It's not easy. And I may spend more time in my life trying to figure out how to include preschoolers on Wednesday night than I do how to include a 6th grader. Because it's so important that they feel like they belong here with all the other bigger kids here at Northgate. And so we are intentional about our ministry here on Wednesday nights to make sure that we include that age group and that they are learning on their level. And so when they develop this concept of God, they perceive the people that they get to see here at Northgate. Their traditions of going to church hopefully twice a week. Their traditions of what it looks like in your home to pray before you eat or to even just eat together, whatever those traditions look like. They are developing this concept of who God is through all of that. Okay? So before the age of 12, kids are deciding what they believe. So before the age of 12, they're deciding what they believe. And this is important for us to understand because oftentimes you see a different kid one week to the next, right? What they believe, what they like, what they dislike is just constantly changing. Like, dude, I can't catch up. Calm down, right? But this is all part of their development, whether it's what they're watching on TV, what they're playing with, who their friends are, the slang that's coming out of their mouth that was different yesterday from today, whatever it looks like, kids are changing constantly, and that can get frustrating, but it also is part of their spiritual development. And so we recognize that here at Northgate. And so kids before the age of 12, which is all of our kids on a Wednesday night, they are deciding what they believe. And so we're super intentional about what we're teaching and how often we're teaching it. Who is God? Is God someone that's looking down on them and disciplining them for their disobedience? Or is God someone who loves them, desires to have a relationship with them, despite despite what this week looked like, despite what their behavior looks like tonight, does God love them through it? And does God receive them? And they're deciding before the age of 12 what they believe. And then at the age of 12, those of you who have students around this age, they start to defend it. Some of you are like, yep, I know. Because it feels like a constant fight, right? I'm right, you're wrong. What I know is right, and you are wrong. And this can continue to change. Sometimes you have a kid defending one thing one day, and the next day they're defending something else. But they're learning how to defend what they believe. And so in our youth group, we're intentional about having conversations. We're intentional about allowing students to ask questions, and it's okay to ask questions. Is God real this week or not? Why on earth does God allow hard things to happen to good people? Why would God allow that to happen in my life? Those are not wrong questions. I've decided this week I'm not following Jesus. I'm over it. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm really glad that you are here. Don't panic. Don't panic. You were a 12-year-old at one time. You were a 16-year-old at one time. God is doing something. If we are continuing to water and plant along the journey of all of these things, God is doing the growth. It's not our job. And sometimes we just want to take a kid and we just want to control everything that they believe and everything that they do. And God forbid that they disobey. God forbid that they make a mistake somewhere. What does it look like when they do? Is there grace? Now, you can't control how the school reacts. You can't control how the law reacts. You can control how you receive them and the grace that you give, because they see God through you. I hope. And that's our goal here at Northgate. In all of our ministries and all that we do is to help build these foundations for kids. Every building block matters because Jesus has laid the foundation. The foundation is on him, not on us. And we just get to help build upon it. And we're intentional about that. Okay? And so ministry is building carefully, not just throwing it together, not just throwing our ministries together, but building carefully, intentional about every single thing that we do. Next thing, ministry is eternal work, not childcare. I'm not going to stay here very long. Because people in my position can get on this soapbox. Everything we do is intentional. It's never childcare. We're never just watching your children. And I say this jokingly in a funny way, so take it correctly. I can see the parents that come in on a Wednesday night and are like, "Oh, thank God, take my child for a week." For a week. I can't do it. For an hour and a half. And just the sigh of relief of like, they're yours. It's Wednesday. It's been a rough day. It's been a rough week. It's been a rough month. They are yours. I don't care if they're crying or what. Just take them. And I get that. I totally get that. I see it in your faces. I see it in your eyes. And we are glad to receive them, right? But what we want you to know is that ministry is eternal work. So never am I planning a Wednesday night or a Sunday night. Never is Pastor Jim doing any of that and thinking, how can we just get through that hour and a half? How can we just watch these kids to make sure they're safe and send them home? Never. It's always intentional. Whether it's a kickball night, I don't think we've ever had one of those, or whether it's a carnival night, or it's a normal night with a message and a snack and small group time, all of those are intentional nights. Because those nights when we have carnival nights, we see the most visitors come in. And a lot of them have come back for a Wednesday night. And that's intentional because that's creating safe environments. That's planting seeds of, hey, this is a safe place for your family and for your kids to be here. And then we get to water it along the way. You see how that's intentional? It's never just how can we get through this? How can we create enough time just to get through? So, we're not babysitting here. In fact, I do not like babysitting. I didn't like it as a teenager. I don't like it now. I just don't like it. Okay? So we're not babysitting. And lastly, Ministry is a team effort. I can't do this alone. Pastor Jim can't do this alone. So when we invite you, we've been doing a lot of inviting on Sunday mornings, inviting you to be a part of what God is already doing in the environments that we have here at Northgate. We're doing it intentionally because not only can we not do it alone, we don't want to do it alone because God is on the move. God is doing some really cool things through our kids and through our teenagers here at Northgate. And we want you to be a part of it because we want you to see what the seeds that have been planted, the seeds that have been watered along the way, whether it's in their homes or here at Northgate. We want you to see the growth that God is doing. And it might be small. It might be just a little sprout, but God is doing big things in the midst, things that we can't see. And I'll go back to the life conference that we took our teenagers to over and over and over again, because I fully believe that seeds that were planted, whether it was here at Northgate or in their homes, where the growth was very evident at the life conference and what God has been doing in their hearts. They just needed a different environment to show it and for God to do a work. And so ministry is a team effort. We can't do it alone. And here's the thing. You don't have to do it alone. So if you're in your homes and maybe you're a single parent and you feel like you're doing this thing by yourself, or maybe your spouse isn't on the same page with you when it comes to how you're raising your kids with God as a foundation, you're not alone. It might feel like you're alone, but you're not. We get to do this as a greater team with Jesus creating the foundation, Jesus and God doing the growth, and we get to be part of the planting and the watering. And so take the pressure off because you're not alone, and seek out the people who are there to help you, whether it's the neighbors that love Jesus or family members that love Jesus or us here at Northgate who love Jesus and are all about the planting and watering. And so, again, I get to brag on Northgate because I get to see it firsthand of the people who, many of you, who are showing up consistently and who are intentional about planting and watering, whether that just looks like saying hello to a kid by name because you remember it and you choose to remember who they are and who they are in Christ, treating a child not by their behavior, but by who they are, who Jesus has created them. You guys are doing that. Northgate is doing that. And it is a privilege. It is an honor and a privilege to be a part of it, and I'm so grateful. If you're not, again, I would invite you to be part of one of those environments where God is doing a work. If you don't want to do it here at Northgate, consider doing it at home or finding another place in your workplace to do it there. Planting and watering is something that we get to do every single day, knowing that God is in charge of the growth and we're not. And so we get to take the pressure off and just be doing what God has called us to do. Let me pray for you. God, you are so good. And I'm grateful for what you've done in my own life. The people that have come along, the people who led the kickball, who made those dirt cups, who welcomed me into the church even though I was only there for a week just to be part of the VBS and to bug out after that. Those people were intentionally planting and watering, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the growth that you've done in my own life. And so, God, I see it. I see what you're doing in the same kids here at Northgate and in our community because of the people that are planting and watering. And so, God, I pray this week as we go that you would show us what needs planted, whose lives just need to know about your love, about their value of who they are in you, despite their circumstances around them. And who needs to be watered? What does it look like to pray for someone intentionally or to just remember their name and show up intentionally in their lives? Whatever that looks like for us, God, we give you the work of growth, and we ask that you help us to be part of the process in that and to put the building blocks up on the foundation that you've built. We're grateful that you call us to do that. We give the rest of this week to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.